It is Tuesday, February 15th, and you are watching Right on Cue Sports. That's right. We're back. Thank you for joining us. Today, we are going to dive into and take a quick snapshot at what has been going on in the offseason for college football in the Pac-12 and in the Mountain West. We're going to take a look at, the offseason of college football is so dynamic and things are changing so often. You have the transfer portal, coaching carousel, you have recruiting, you have all kinds of different things going on that I don't hit on it all that often. But I think now that we had our second signing day close, a lot of the transfer portal activity has come to a close. Pretty much all of the coaching carousel has come to a close. I want to take a look at where each of these conferences stand, where it looks like teams might have potential to rise or to fall based off of their offseason activity. So first, let's just go ahead and start off right here with a quick little recap. The Mountain West finished 5-1 in bowl season last year, an outstanding, impressive bowl season for the Mountain West last year. Fresno State won in the New Mexico Bowl 31-24 over UTEP. Utah State won the Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl 24-13 over Oregon State. Wyoming got the big win over Kent State 52-38 in the Idaho Potato Bowl. San Diego State won the Frisco Bowl 38-24 over one of my favorite teams from last year, the UTSA Roadrunners. Air Force won the big game over Louisville 31-28 in the First Responders Bowl. And then the lone loss for the conference, Nevada lost the Quick Lane Bowl 24-52 to a very impressive and better than people thought Western Michigan squad. So let's take a look at the off-season activity for each of these teams. We're going to go in order that these teams finished in the conference last year, starting in the Mountain Division of the Mountain West. Utah State finished the season 11-3. They beat Oregon State, like I mentioned, in the LA Bowl. They are 113th in the country in returning production at just 55%, only 63% on offense, and a really low 47 on defense. Out of a maximum of 25 recruits, they have fulfilled 22 commitments. They are fourth in the Mountain West in the recruiting rankings, but don't have a single 4-star. All 3 stars or below. Next, the Air Force Falcons finished last year 10-3 with that win over Louisville in the First Responders Bowl. They are 70th in the country in returning production, 65% total, 70% on offense, 59% on defense. Now, a little quirky here, but because it's a service academy, they don't do recruiting the same way as other schools. They have 44 commits, but they're all not really blue chippers. Air Force is 10th in the conference in recruiting. They'll reload, though. This is a team that very well could win 10 games again next year. They play Colorado next year early in the season, so that'll be a fun one to watch. Next, the Boise State Broncos finished 7-5 last year with a win they had the Sun Bowl they were supposed to compete in, but it was canceled due to COVID. They are 38th in the country at returning production, 73%, 65% on offense, 81% on defense. This Boise State team hasn't been the same since Brian Harsin left, so we'll see if another year with this much production coming back, a little more maturity, whether they can exert themselves in the Mountain Division. Then Wyoming finished 7-6. They had that massive, impressive win in the Idaho Potato Bowl at the end of the season, but they only returned 55%, which is 112th production returning in the country, 51% on offense, 59% on defense. They lose the linebacker, all-conference linebacker, Chad Muma. They also lost their star running back, Xavier Valladay. He transferred to Arizona State. And they lost to quarterback Sean Chambers. Now, Sean Chambers was replaced late in the season by the quarterback Levi Williams, who will be back. The Cowboys also get, through the transfer portal, quarterback Andrew Peasley and a pretty good linebacker, Cole DeMarzo. Wyoming is 7th in the conference in recruiting. They have 17 commitments. They have a 6'4", 270 linebacker who's a 4-star, Deshaun Woods, the second best player out of the state of Nebraska. They also got a pretty dang good offensive lineman who 24/7 Sports has named their all-impact team as well. Colorado State finished 3-9 last year on the season. In a pretty big get, Colorado State signed Jay Norvell as their new head coach as Steve Adazio leaves. Heard nothing but bad things about Steve Adazio, so it was good that they're replacing him with a much more measured coach, a successful coach like Jay Norvell. He comes from Nevada. Colorado State returns 64% of their production. That's 73rd in the country, 55% on offense. They lose Trey McBride, their All-American tight end. That's going to hurt the offense quite a bit. But the defense returns a lot of production. They are 6th in the conference in recruiting rankings with 14 commits. They have one 3-star, 6'1", 190 Mekhi Fox, who's just straight up speedster, a hell of a pickup for Colorado State. The only thing for him is going to be trying to figure out what position you want him to play at. Then for New Mexico, they finished 3-9 last year, 101st in returning production in the country, 57%. Only 44% returning production on offense, which is probably okay because their offense was terrible last year. They do return 71% on defense, 8th in the conference in recruiting. Got to be better than that. And especially when you've already signed 24 commits, that's out of a 25 possible recruits, scholarships. So they're pretty well done recruiting, and they're in the bottom half of the conference already. That's not great. The Mountain Division looks pretty wide open this season with so much turnover. Boise State has probably a slight edge at this point over Air Force with their returning production. And now we dive into the West Division. San Diego State finished the season 12-2 last year, and they beat Texas San Antonio in the Frisco Bowl. I got to say, the Aztecs are here to stay. Brady Hoke continues his second round at the helm, and this team just keeps reloading. They do lose a ton of production. They only bring back 54%, especially on offense, 44% they lose. But that's losing their quarterback, Lucas Johnson, and their quarterback, Jordan Berkshire. But they replace both of them with the quarterback, Braxton Burmeister, who's a hell of a transfer coming in. I think the major problem for San Diego State is they're losing their All-American punter, Matt Arezia. And this dude was incredible. He would flip the field. He would bury teams down at the 1-yard line. He was really a heck of a special teams player. But San Diego State is second in the conference in recruiting. They have fulfilled 17 of their commits so far. They have a lock on that Southern California area. Brady Hoke just flat out knows how to recruit that area. Next, Fresno State. Fresno State finished the season 10-3 last year and beat UTEP in a tremendous game that they won the New Mexico Bowl. And boy, Kalen Bauer did not stay long. For those of you Colorado fans that are bitter about Mel Tucker, well, Fresno State had Kalen Bauer even less time. The head coach, Kalen Bauer, takes the job at Washington after just 1 year at Fresno, and they bring in the living legend, basically, Jeff Tedford, back to coach at Fresno State. Fresno State is 22nd in the country at returning production, 78%, most of it coming back on offense, most especially because they get their prime-time, fantastic, phenomenal quarterback, Jake Haener, back. He was the ninth leading passer in the country last year, 4,096 yards. He had 33 touchdowns on the year. Kind of surprisingly, in that bowl game, he was only held to 1 touchdown pass. A little bit of a quandary there. But this is a team, Fresno State. This could maybe be your Cincinnati of last year. This might be one of the best non-Power 5 conference teams in the country with all of their returning production. And oh, by the way, they also have the 3rd best recruiting class in the Mountain West, 19 commits so far. I'd keep my eye on Fresno State. Nevada finished 8-5 last year. They lost, like I mentioned, to Western Michigan in the Quick Lane Bowl. They promote their defensive coordinator, Ken Wilson, to head coach after CSU poached Jay Norvell away. Nevada loses a ton of production. They only bring back 27%, just 20% on offense. The obviously big gaping hole is the quarterback, Carson Strong. And Nevada's 11th in the conference in recruiting as of now. Now, they only have 13 recruits so far, so we could see something develop maybe through the transfer portal. But it's looking pretty bleak. I would look at Nevada as a team that's going to take a few steps back this year, especially with the head coach leaving. Then San Jose State finished 5-7 last year, 107th in the country with just 57% production coming back, 58% on offense, 55 on defense. They bring in the star quarterback from Hawaii, Chevan Cordeiro. Now he's a straight up gunslinger. He makes a lot of mistakes, but he also throws for a ton of yards, like many of the Hawaii quarterbacks of old. That's a big pickup, especially in conference, in division for San Jose State. They are fifth in the conference currently in recruiting rankings, and they only have filled 17 of their scholarships to this point. Hawaii finishes the season 6-7 on the year. They did not get a bowl game. They just had 13 regular season games. They lose a ton of production as well, only return 33%. Big hurt on the program of Chevan Cordeiro leaving to go to San Jose State. They are 12th in the conference in recruiting rankings, but they only have 12 commits so far. So there's still time for them to be making some moves, picking up people in the transfer portal, and seeing where they want to assign those remaining scholarships at this point. And then finally, the beleaguered UNLV Running Rebels, 2-10 last year, 17 in the country though in returning production. But again, like I said with New Mexico, that might be a problem because it was not great production last year. But you're going to have more consistency on defense, so at least you can say that. They're 9th in the country in recruiting. They've filled 10 commits so far just to this point. I think I would look at UNLV as maybe being a team that could move up a spot or two. You could maybe see them finish 4th in the West Division, ahead of maybe Nevada and Hawaii. Fresno State and San Diego State, I think, are the clear frontrunners in the Mountain Division. Both teams have a huge non-conference matchup. Fresno State has Oregon State and at USC. San Diego State gets Arizona at home and at Utah. Utah will probably be a top 10, top 15 preseason team. The Mountain West, like I mentioned, went 5-1 in the bowl season last year. This means that they belong in better bowl games. They're getting underseeded in the bowls they're being sent to. So look for some more parity, some more fun out of the Mountain West this year. Unlike the Mountain West, the Pac-12 was abysmal in bowl season. They didn't win a single bowl game last year, 0-5 on the season. This conference is rapidly drifting off into oblivion. Every team in the Pac-12 last year finished with at least 4 losses. This is not a Power 5 conference. This conference is maybe just a little bit better as far as production on the field than the Mountain West at this point. But let's take a look at some of the offseason moves here from the North Division in the Pac-12. Again, going in the order that they finished this last season. Oregon finished 10-4. They lost to Oklahoma in the Alamo Bowl. Now the head coach, Mario Cristobal, is out. He goes to Miami. In comes the new head coach, Dan Lanning, who's the defensive coordinator for Georgia, the national champions this last year. Oregon is 75th in the country, only bringing back 63%. That's not terrible. They did lose their 4-star offensive tackle, Kingsley Sama-Tulala, to BYU. And they lost their 4-star running back, Travis Dye, to USC. You don't like to see that if you're Oregon. They are 3rd in the conference, though, in recruiting. 15 commits, 7 of them are 4-stars. They bring in the 4-star linebacker, 6'2", 200, Devon Jackson, who's the number 1 player out of the state of Nebraska. He's going to be a good replacement fill on that defense at linebacker. Next, we have the Washington State Cougars, finished 7-6 on the year and lost to Central Michigan in the Sun Bowl. That's an embarrassing performance for the Pac-12. Jake Dickert was hired as the head coach after being the interim head coach when they had fired their previous coach mid-season. The Washington State Cougars lose their great quarterback, really pretty impressive quarterback, Jaden DeLara, who transfers out. He passed for 2,798 yards and 23 touchdowns last year. This Washington State squad is 119th in the country with only 52% returning. They're 9th in the conference in recruiting. This Washington State squad is one that's going to take a step back or two this coming up year. Then Oregon State and had pretty surprising season. I mean, they lost a couple down the stretch. Probably shouldn't have lost to Colorado. It was a surprising upstart year for Oregon State. 7-6 on the season. They lost to Utah State in the LA Bowl, another pretty pitiful performance for the Pac-12. But this is a program that seems like it's on the rise. Unfortunately for them, they have an extremely difficult schedule this year. They play Boise at home. They travel to Fresno State. They also play at Utah. They have games against USC and some of the other better teams. Obviously, Oregon, it's a civil war, the last game of the season. But they return 73% of their production, so that's good consistency coming back. Sixth in the conference in recruiting, and they've only filled 16 commits, so they've got room to make some more moves. Oregon State, I think, is a team that I would pick to get 8 wins if they didn't have such a difficult schedule, but they do. So they're probably going to be right around that 6-6 line again this next year, if not worse. Then California, the Golden Bears, finished 5-7 this last year in a real pretty disappointing season for Cal. They only get 55% of their production back from last year, this coming year. Linebacker Jackson Sermon comes in from Washington, and the 4-star edge, Xavier Carlton, comes in from Utah. Those are a couple of big pickups for California. They're 8th in the conference in recruiting, 14 commits. They do, though, have 1 4-star, so they're adding good production with Sermon and Carlton and a 4-star through the recruiting ranks. I think California is the team you're going to see second or maybe third in the Pac-12 North. At least they have the talent to do it. They do have to replace quite a bit with only 55% production coming back. Then Washington, 4-8 on the year last year, really an underperforming season for Washington. But in comes Kalen DeBauer, the head coach that comes in from Fresno State. Really a pretty impressive hire for Washington. He's kind of a young talent like you saw with Chris Peterson. And I'm not saying he's going to bring back the glory days that they had under Chris Peterson, but he has that kind of demeanor about him. Washington brings back 74% of their production from last year. They get the 4-star running back Aaron Dumas in from New Mexico. Unfortunately, though, they lost their 4-star linebacker Jackson Sermon, like I mentioned, to Cal. Washington is having a poor recruiting season. They're 11th in the conference. Only 9 commits have they signed so far. One, though, was a 4-star recruit. And then finally, out of the North, Stanford, who also had an underwhelming season, 3-9 on the year. I think David Shaw may very well be on the hot seat. This is now Stanford's only won 4 games in each of the last 3 seasons. So this is a developing trend. They do return 88% of their production, though. That's third in the country. Their 4-star edge, Andrus Fox, has put his name in the transfer portal. Has not been picked up yet. So it might just be an exploration thing. Stanford, number 1 in the conference in recruiting rankings. They have almost filled all of their scholarships, 22 commits so far, 7 4-star recruits. The 4-star edge, 6'3", 220, David Bailey. They pick up the number 5 recruit out of the state of California. That's an impressive class. Look for Stanford to bounce back as well. I think Cal and Stanford are 2 teams that are going to be on the rise come next year, especially out of the North. Then in the South Division, Utah finished the season 10-4. They lost that incredible Rose Bowl game to Ohio State. This bunch is really, I think, the only New Year's Six threat for a New Year's Six Bowl in the conference. They lose a lot of production, though. They only bring back 66%. They lose the stud special teams player, Britton Covey. But the star quarterback, the gem they discovered mid-season last year, Cam Rising, is back. They get a 4-star linebacker, Mahmoud Diabate, in from Florida. That's going to be a big pickup to solidify that defense. And remember, Devon Lloyd, their star linebacker, went into the draft. So they're going to probably look to this guy or maybe some other linebackers on their roster to fill that major role for them, the middle linebacker spot. Utah, 4th in the conference in recruiting, 17 commits. They already have 3 4-stars. This is already one of the best recruiting seasons for Utah in their program's history. They got 4-star running back Jaylon Glover, who's the 43rd best player out of the state of Florida. Now, this kid's kind of a scat back, so it'll be interesting to see if he's able to be successful kind of hiding behind the big offensive line at Utah. He goes 5'7", 205, but he's lightning fast. The Utes don't get BYU this year, but they do play at Florida to start the season. That'll be interesting for Mahmoud Diabate, who just transferred from Florida. I think that's a game Utah wins, by the way, down at Florida. And they host a very talented San Diego State squad later in the season. Arizona State next out of the Pac-12 South finished the season 8-5. They lost to Wisconsin in the Las Vegas Bowl, a game where they could get absolutely no offense going. I'm starting to grow concerned about Herm Edwards' job security at Arizona State. They seem to be right on the edge, but they just can't get over the hump. They returned 74% of their production to this team from last year. Four-star defensive lineman Nesta Jade Silvera comes in from Miami. And like I mentioned earlier, Xavier Valade, the three-star running back from Wyoming, transfers into Arizona State. He's going to be a stud. They only have the 12th ranked recruiting class in the conference. They've only filled 9 scholarships. Remember, they had NCAA investigation because of some of their recruiting practices during COVID in that 2020 season or whatever. So there may be some ramifications, restrictions going on. That's what's keeping their recruiting ranking down so low. They do pick up one 4-star player, however, through the recruiting season. Then UCLA finished 8-4. They were supposed to play in a bowl game, but it was canceled, like Boise State, due to COVID. And the question for this team is, can Chip Kelly take the next step? Everybody was high on him, thought he could do it. He'd done it before at Oregon in the Pac-12, right? Well, I mean, an 8-4 season is a pretty good season for UCLA. So can they take the next step to get to 10 wins? They return only 59% of their production from last year. They lost their 4-star cornerback Jay Shaw to Wisconsin, and not a super impressive recruiting ranking. They're 7th in the conference, only 11 commits so far. But they do bring in 6 4-star players. So most of those are on defense. They're going to solidify the defense. They need to figure out a few things on offense. But, can UCLA take that next step? They'll be a contender in the Pac-12 South next year. Then USC finished 4-8 last year. And as everyone's aware of at this point, they bring in Lincoln Riley, the head coach from Oklahoma, to take over. Now, USC loses 41% of their production. They only return 59%. They already brought in the running back 4-star Travis Dye from Oregon. Huge get. They bring in the 5-star quarterback Caleb Williams from Oklahoma. Another huge get. They bring in the 4-star wide receiver Mario Williams from Oklahoma. It's a huge get. But they lost their 2 quarterbacks. Their 5-star quarterback Jackson Dart just transferred to Ole Miss to play with Lane Kiffin, and Keaton Slovis went to Pittsburgh. USC, a poor recruiting class. I think Lincoln Riley coming in late in the game and all the activity and attention they've spent on the transfer portal kind of left them kind of picking at the bottom of the barrel for recruiting. They're 10th in the conference. They only have 8 commits. They did, however, find a way to get a 5-star, the defensive back Domani Jackson, who just so happens to be the best defensive player recruit out of the state of California. 6'1", 185. He is super fast. He's a ball hawk. USC, by a lot of experts, USC is projected to be a top 25 team next year. I don't buy it. I believe they will be elite, likely, in the future, I think, but it's going to take a couple of years for Lincoln Riley at the helm. I think a lot of people think that, you just plug and play these transfers, and Mel Tucker was able to do it last year, but just Mel Tucker. Who else was able to do that last year? Alex Grinch, I think, has his work cut out for him on the defense. This is a team that finished 4-8 last season. They gave up 30-plus points 8 times last year. USC gave up 40-plus points 4 times last year, and UCLA hung a mighty 62 points on this Trojans defense last year. So the defense has a lot of work to do. They face 4 of the top 40 offenses from last year this next year. They're at Utah, at UCLA, and they face one of the best group of 5 teams, like I mentioned, in Fresno State and Jake Haener. Extremely potent offense. Also, the distraction element, I think, is really high for this USC squad. Lincoln Riley has made the rounds with different media appearances. And Caleb Williams, I just saw, was on Good Morning America the other day. So, um, I think all of that culminates into what's probably going to be at a maximum 8 wins for USC next year. But people are talking about them. Well, I mean, even as high as maybe making a run at the playoff. That's just absurd. I don't see how that's possible. But within 3 years, I think USC could be back. So now's the time to strike if you're one of these other teams and you want to win the Pac-12. And then we have Colorado, finished 4-8 again this year. Karl Dorrell is, I think, firmly on the hot seat as the Buffs fired almost half of their coaching staff in the offseason, specifically the offensive coaching staff. The Buffs get 63% of their production back from last year. And now here we go with the transfer portal. Jarek Broussard to Michigan State, Mekhi Blackman and Brendan Rice to USC, Mark Perry to TCU, Christian Gonzalez to Oregon. Okay, if you don't recall from last year, those are 3: Mark Perry, Christian Gonzalez, Mekhi Blackman, 3 of the 4 starting secondary players for the Buffs last year, all transferred out. All were young, extremely talented. Really, really embarrassing black mark on the Buffalo's program to be getting dominated as they are in the transfer portal right now. They did bring in 3-star, 6'5", 220 quarterback Maddox Kopp from Houston. We'll have to see if he can outperform Brendan Lewis. I'm pretty underwhelmed by the effort the Buffs have made to pick up offensive linemen and a quarterback. So we'll see how that works out moving forward. You do replace Brendan Rice to an extent with the transfer that comes in from Baylor, R.J. Sneed. But like I said, this Buffs team is going to be super weak in the secondary. Teams are going to pass all over the Colorado Buffaloes. And you have that happening right as your linebacking core is about as weak as it's been in 4 years because you lose Carson Wells. Robert Barnes, the transfer from Oklahoma, has now graduated. And you lose, obviously, Nate Landman. Your stalwart leader on that defense is going to the NFL. So Colorado does have the number 5 recruiting class in the conference as of now. However, they have fulfilled all 25 of their scholarships. So the only place they can go is down. There's no more room for them to make any moves. The Buffaloes have 0 4-star recruits that they've picked up. Their best recruit probably is 3-star safety Dylan Dixon, who is the number 92 defensive player out of the state of Texas. He goes 6'2", 190. We'll see. He's going to have to learn quick on the job because we need help in the secondary. So we'll have to see how that goes. A little point of emphasis I want to put out there for Colorado fans. I hear a lot that, well, the Buffaloes should have never joined the Pac-12. It doesn't mesh well, this and that. All these different excuses for why Colorado can't be successful in the Pac-12. Colorado and Utah both entered the Pac-12 in the 2011 season. Since then, Utah is their average record at Utah 7-5. Colorado's 4-8. Okay, Utah has won the Pac-12 South 3 times. Colorado's done it once, and Utah has 5 times has had a 9-win or better season in that stretch. Colorado's done it once. So I don't know what it is people think. It's always this comparison. Oh, well, how are we supposed to compete with USC, UCLA? I don't know. Why don't you just try and compete with Utah? Does Utah have some incredibly better facilities than we do? Do they have some wildly larger endowment than we do? Do they have a better school, academics? No. The answer is no to all of that. Okay, they're just better. So why don't we try and compete with Utah and stop worrying about all these different excuses? I'll tell you one thing. Utah pays their coach, and their coach has been there for a long time. That's probably a part of the key to success. Just food for thought. And then finally, we have the Arizona Wildcats, 1-11 last year. They have been absolutely terrible the last 2 years. They returned 72% of their production. They do get the 4-star wide receiver Jacob Cowling transferring in from Utah, or from UTEP, and the quarterback I mentioned that was leaving Washington State, Jaden DeLora, comes in 3-star from Washington State to Arizona. He will likely be the starter. Here's what I want fans to look at. Okay, if you're down on your team, if you don't understand why they're doing well, Arizona is number 2 in the conference in recruiting ranking currently. They have no advantage over any other team in the conference. They are a grand total of 1-23 in the last 2 seasons, and they fired their head coach. They're number 2 in the conference in recruiting. 22 commitments. They have five 4-stars. Okay, their 4-star wide receiver they just picked up, 6'4", 185. Tetairoa McMillan, number 4 recruit out of the state of California. Okay, can we compete with Utah? Can we compete with Arizona? Okay, I'm not asking to compete with Oregon. I'm not asking to compete with USC, Alabama. Can we beat Arizona and can we beat Utah? Is that all that much to ask? So, anyways, that was a quick run through there of each of the conferences and where things stand at this point. I appreciate you guys checking in with us here on Right on Cue College Sports. Hopefully, we are now more informed. We are better armed to have conversations with our friends and our coworkers about the college football and college basketball landscape when we are circled around the water cooler. So, I'm your host, Tyson Quiller. Thanks again for checking us out, and we will catch you next time.